He who does not hear does not suffer. But he who does not suffer, is he really alive? This provocation, which seems to spring from a thought as cynical as it is realistic, introduces a complex and universal theme: the relationship between sensitivity and practical action in everyday life. This video explores the dilemma raised by the great writer and poet Fernando Pessoa, an author who dedicated much of his work to reflecting on the meaning of existence and the role of sensitivity in our ability to act. On November 30th, 1935, something incredible happened in Portugal. Dozens of writers died. But let me explain. They came from different backgrounds, had contrasting ideologies, and wrote in completely different styles. And yet, all their works were crammed into one big trunk in an apartment in Lisbon. But what united these figures? That trunk belonged to the enigmatic Fernando Pessoa, who, in reality, was all of them. Many authors use pseudonyms to hide their identity or to give a different nuance to their art. Pessoa, however, was the first to take this concept to a level never seen before. He created something unique: his heteronyms. He didn't just sign with another name, he wrote as if he were another person, inventing real identities, complete with stories, personalities, and distinctive styles. Each heteronym had a unique literary voice, which Pessoa enriched with imaginary details, making each of them an autonomous figure. The heteronyms were not just narrative tools, but true protagonists of a creative universe. Sometimes they interacted with each other, even criticizing each other. Pessoa described this experience as a wandering in one's own conscience, and defined himself as a kind of medium, torn between the multiple identities he had created. He wrote, "I am less real than the others, less important, less personal, and easily influenced by each of them." Fernando Pessoa was born on June 13, 1888 in Lisbon, Portugal. His father was a civil servant and music critic, while his mother, originally from the Azores, was a teacher. Fernando, at the age of 5, lost his father, who died of tuberculosis when he was just 43, an event that deeply marked his childhood. In 1895, his mother remarried to a Portuguese consul living in Durban, South Africa. The family was forced to move to that city. Fernando attended English schools, learning the language with a mastery that profoundly influenced his writing. Despite the move, he maintained a deep connection with Lisbon, which he considered his true home. The years spent in Durban enriched his literary experience and broadened his worldview, but his mother and homeland remained central to his life. Returning to Lisbon at the age of 17, he found himself immersed in a city that, despite its cultural and political ferment, seemed to him like a refuge for his restless soul. He led a secluded life, preferring the silence of his room to the frenzy of the outside world. He worked as a commercial correspondent to earn a living, but his true world was that of literature, where he could explore the great themes of human existence, such as the meaning of life, solitude, and the confrontation with destiny. Lisbon, while a place of roots and inspiration for him, was also a symbol of the human condition, chaotic, changeable, but full of hidden beauty for those who knew how to observe it. Pessoa was fascinated by the concept of identity and the multiplicity of being ideas he explored through his many heteronyms. Through these alter egos, Pessoa was able to explore different perspectives on the meaning of life and human existence. Among the works in which he deals with these themes in greater depth, the Book of Disquiet stands out, a collection of fragments attributed to Bernardo Soares, one of his heteronyms. This text, halfway between a diary and a philosophical reflection, investigates existential disquiet, solitude, and the search for meaning in a world apparently devoid of order. Similarly, poems such as Tabacaria, signed by the heteronym Álvaro de Campos, give voice to a profound sense of bewilderment and reflect on the emptiness of modernity and the fragility of being. Despite the depth and richness of his creative universe, his personal life was marked by solitude and restlessness. Added to this was a problematic relationship with alcohol, which he used perhaps to alleviate the internal anguish that tormented him. This dark side never obscured his genius, but contributed to making his existence a reflection of the contradictions and tensions he explored in his works. If you like, you can support us by leaving a like, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so, or with a donation through the super thanks you find below the video. We thank everyone for the constant support we receive. Pessoa died on November 30th, 1935, at the age of 47 in Lisbon, due to a liver crisis related to alcohol abuse. Today, he rests in the Jerónimos Monastery, an iconic place in the Portuguese capital that celebrates some of the most illustrious personalities in its history. Practical life, according to Pessoa, requires emotional detachment. That is, to act effectively, sensitivity must be minimized, which otherwise risks slowing down or complicating the decision-making process. Action represents the projection of personality onto the outside world, a world populated by individuals with emotions, needs, and personal paths. Inevitably, those who act interfere with the lives of others, modifying or sometimes destroying them. This raises profound questions. Is it possible to live without touching, in some way, the existence of others? An emblematic example of this dynamic is represented by the image of the strategist. Pessoa describes this figure as the practical man par excellence, capable of making cold decisions, free from the influence of feelings. Like a chess player who moves the pieces on the board, the strategist considers human lives as elements of a game. If he were to be overwhelmed by the awareness that each move could generate suffering or pain, he would not be able to act. One does not live by dreaming, one lives by acting, says Pessoa, emphasizing how detachment is essential for those who want to have a concrete impact on reality. Yet, this ability to detach poses an existential dilemma. Without sensitivity, the world could indeed progress, but at what cost? Pessoa reflects precisely on this. To build civilization, it is necessary to put sensitivity aside, because those who are too sensitive could block or hesitate, worrying about the consequences of their actions on others. At the same time, he recognizes that it is precisely sensitivity, that is, the ability to understand and connect with others, that defines what makes humanity healthy. From here, the paradox arises. Sensitivity is both what makes us human and what we should limit in order to build a functioning civilization. And he also proposes civilization is the result of the repression of the instinct to live, he writes, indicating how progress requires compromises that often limit the most authentic humanity. Life is, in a sense, a constant battle. For some, acting inevitably means crossing the path of others. For others, it is a necessity that cannot be ignored. In this framework, art becomes a refuge for the sensitivity that practical life often cannot tolerate. Pessoa suggests that art offers a space in which the soul finds peace and sensitivity can express itself freely without being seen as an obstacle. Art is nothing but life made more beautiful, he writes, revealing the cathartic and therapeutic function of creativity. Art, according to him, does not eliminate the contradictions of existence, but helps us live with them. On another occasion, he reflects, "To create is to live twice," suggesting that through art, it is possible to live a deeper and more conscious existence. These reflections lead to a fundamental question. Is it really possible to live without sensitivity, or is the real challenge to find a balance between action and feeling? Pessoa does not provide definitive answers, but invites each person to explore these questions in their own context. As he states in one of his works, "To live is to be something else." This suggests that existence is a continuous tension between what one is and what one tries to become. It is the path of those who never stop changing, adapting, growing. It means accepting that identity is not something fixed, but a process in continuous evolution made of choices, doubts, and transformations. Each step leads to something new, and perhaps it is precisely in this incessant movement that the meaning of life lies. And then he also adds, "What we see is not what we see, but what we are." A phrase that invites us to reflect on the subjective nature of existence and the need to look inside ourselves to understand the world. For those who question the meaning of life, Pessoa's reflections do not offer a definitive solution, but constitute a starting point. The search for balance between sensitivity and action is a personal journey that everyone is called to undertake. These thoughts, however, leave one certainty. You cannot fully understand the world without first understanding yourself. That's all for today. Goodbye. See you next time.